How was your day? Maybe today held a small moment when something inside you knew the truth before anyone said it out loud. Not loud, just a quiet knowing. In old Ireland there was a woman who lived inside that kind of knowing. They called her the Morrigan, the Phantom Queen. She saw things first, and it made her tender and tired and very alone. Tonight we are going to walk slowly into her story. The air is cool here. There is a river just ahead. You can hear it before you see it. And somewhere, a single black bird is already watching the water. Skip ahead with me for a moment. A young warrior is tied to a great standing stone. He is dying on his feet, and from a long way off, a black bird is already in the air, moving toward him without hurry, because she has always known. She does not save him. She did not come to save him. She came to be there. And when she lands on his shoulder, the war is over, and the long quiet of the story finally begins. The strange thing is, she had warned him years before. At a quiet ford, she had offered him her hand, her help, her love, and he had laughed. He had sent her away. So why does she come back at the end? Why does the goddess he refused stand witness for him anyway? That is the old question. It is the one we are following tonight slowly, together. Maybe you know that pattern. Someone tells you the hard thing, not to hurt you, to help you, and you cannot hear it yet. Years later, you understand who they were. This is what we do here. Every week, one old story, one quiet night. Something that happened a very long time ago, and still has something kind to say. So settle in now. Fix your pillow. Find a warm place for your hands. If you fall asleep before her story ends, the old goddess will not mind. She has watched over sleeping people for a very long time. This is only the beginning, the part most people never reach, what she does at the very end, that is still ahead, but not tonight. Tonight, just this. If tonight feels like something, subscribe. We will be here next week. Another old story, another quiet night like this. Now back to ours. Long before the round towers, before the high crosses, before Ireland had any of the names you know, there was an older Ireland. Wet, green, half-wild, and held by people who believed that the land itself could speak. Among the people of that land lived a family of gods called the Tuatha De Danann, the children of the goddess Danu. They were craftsmen, healers, harpers, and among them 3 sisters who saw what no one else could see yet. One of them, the tallest, the one with hair as black as wet stone, they called the Morrigan, the Great Queen, the Phantom Queen, 2 names for one truth. She had a cave, not a home, a cave, a low dark mouth in a limestone hill in Connacht. The old people said it was a door, and on certain evenings you could feel the cold air drifting out of it, even in summer. People left things at the entrance, a bowl of milk, a bit of bread, a small bronze ring. They did not pray for favors, they prayed for the truth to be a little gentler when it came. And on one such evening, a slow evening the color of an old coin, she came out of the cave, bare feet on cool stone, a black feather tucked behind one ear, and the long story of her watching began. The old Irish did not always speak of the Morrigan as one woman. Sometimes they spoke of 3 sisters, 3 faces of a single quiet truth that the land kept turning over. The first of them was Badby, the crow at the edge of the field, the one who came when something was about to end, and who told you, with her presence alone, that it was time to lay something down. Maybe you know someone like that. A friend who walks into the room and you can already feel the truth she has come to tell. You do not love her less for it. You love her more carefully. The second was Nemain. Her name meant frenzy, but that is the word strangers used. Inside her own people, she meant something gentler, the sudden quiet that falls over a person who finally sees the truth. When Nemain entered a room, the room slowed down. Voices softened. People remembered the thing they had been avoiding, and then, very quietly, they said it out loud. The third was Macha, the one with her hand on the bridle, the one who taught the people of Ulster how to ride, and how to plow, and how to keep an oath you had given out loud. Macha did not threaten. She did not need to. The land remembered who had kept their word and who had not. And in the old Ireland, the land was the one that decided what came back to you. And then there was the Morrigan herself, the eldest of them in some tellings, the mother of them in others, the one who held the door at the cave at Cu Chulainn and decided who would pass through. 3 sisters. 3 faces, 1 truth. The truth was simply this, that in any life worth living, somebody has to be the one who already knows. The Morrigan held that knowing for a whole island, for all of Ireland, every battle, every birth, every quiet death in a back room. She felt it before it arrived. It is hard work. That kind of knowing, it tires the body. It empties the voice. It makes you very gentle, and it makes you a little distant, both at the same time. Maybe you have met someone like her. Maybe you have been someone like her, the one in the family who always knows, the one in the room who already heard the news before the phone rang. That gift does not come with instructions. The Morrigan had to learn how to carry it. The early stories say she learned slowly, the way every real teacher learns, by getting it wrong, kindly, many times. She watched first. That was the beginning. She climbed the roof of a high hall, took the shape of a black crow, and listened to the way kings spoke when they thought no one was listening. The kings who spoke kindly when no one watched, those were the ones she chose. The ones who shouted in private and smiled in public, those were the ones she let the land remove, slowly, in its own time. This is what the old Irish meant by sovereignty. It was not a crown. It was not an army. It was a quiet agreement between a person and the land, that they would tell each other the truth. And the Morrigan was the witness of that agreement, the one who watched whether you kept it. She did not write it down. She did not have to. The land remembered. Some kings understood her. They left small things at the cave at Cu Chulainn, a comb, a bowl of milk, a small woven ribbon, not to ask for power, to ask only to be reminded. Other kings forgot her. They left nothing. They kept no oath, and one slow season at a time, their cattle thinned, their wives turned away, their warriors went home, and the land quietly took back what it had loaned. The Morrigan did not curse them. The old Irish gods rarely cursed. They simply withdrew, and the absence of a goddess is far heavier than her presence ever was. There is a name for that, in many languages. The feeling that something old and kind has stopped looking. The old Irish knew it. They tried very hard not to deserve it. The Morrigan, for her part, did not enjoy that role. She did not want to be the absence. She would rather be invited in for tea. But she carried the work because someone had to. Now I want to slow down here, because this is where the real story begins. Not in a battle, not in a death, in a small green field at the edge of a slow river. One of the kings of the Tuatha De Danann was a broad-bearded man called the Dagda, the good god, not because he was perfect, because he was kind in a steady, useful way. The Dagda carried a club so heavy he had to drag one end of it behind him. He carried a great cauldron that fed anyone who came hungry, and he carried a small dark harp that could change the season of your heart in 3 notes. He was not a clever man. He was something better. He was a present man. When he was with you, he was actually with you. And in any age that is rare. A long war was coming. The Tuatha De Danann were preparing to face the Fomorians, an older, darker people who had ruled Ireland before them. The Dagda was looking for help wherever he could find it. He had been told by a soft-spoken seer in a smoky hut that on a certain evening at a certain ford he would meet a woman who knew everything he did not. He should go, and he should listen. So that is what he did. He set out from his fort with the harp under his arm, the club dragging behind him, and the slow heart of a man who did not know yet who he was about to meet. The walk was long. The day grew warm and then cool again. Birds rose and settled. Cattle watched him pass without much interest, and somewhere ahead a woman was already at the water, waiting. The Morrigan had felt him coming for hours, not the way you feel footsteps, the way you feel weather. She had walked down from her hill, taken off her shoes, and stepped into the cool water of the ford. She did not look for him. She did not need to. The land told her. The reeds told her. The slow flow of the brown water around her ankles told her. He was almost here. When the Dagda came over the rise above the ford, he stopped. He saw her in the water. He saw the way the river moved around her, not past her, around her, as if she were a stone in the world. He set his club down in the grass. He set his harp beside it. He took off his own boots, and he walked down to the water to meet her, slowly, like a man approaching a deer. She did not turn to face him until he was almost in the water beside her. Then she did, and her gray-green eyes met his warm brown ones, and the world went very still for both of them. They did not speak first about the war. They spoke first about the water, about the reeds, about the heat of the day, the way old friends do even on the first time of meeting. Maybe you know that kind of meeting, where the small talk is not small at all, where every quiet thing said about the weather is really a way of saying, "I see you, I will not rush you." When at last they did speak of the war, she did not lecture him. She told him 3 things he needed, and the 3 things were small and strange and exact. She told him the day, she told him the place. She told him the moment when the tide of the battle would turn, and the exact word he must shout so the Tuatha would hold their line. He did not write it down. The old people rarely did. He let her words sit in him like seeds in cool earth, and he trusted that, when the moment came, the words would come up with him. That is how the old Irish learned things that mattered. Not from books, from quiet meetings beside water, from a woman who already knew, telling a man who was willing to listen. Stay with me for a moment in this small story-shaped pause, because before we go further, I want you to feel one thing the old Irish felt, about their land and about her. For them, the land was not a backdrop. It was not scenery for human stories. The land was a woman, a real, breathing, listening woman, and the goddess we are following was, in some way, her face. A king was not a king because he won a fight. A king was a king because he had married, in some quiet, symbolic way, the land beneath him. And the land had said, "Yes, I will hold you." When that quiet yes went wrong, when a king lied or hoarded or stopped listening, the Morrigan was the one who came down from the hill to say, gently and once, that the land was beginning to take her yes back. That is the role she carried, all through the early stories. The gentle once-only voice. And many kings in their time were grateful. Some were not, and we will meet one of those much later, at a ford very much like this one. Now back to our 2 figures at the ford. The Dagda and the Morrigan stood up from the flat stone, side by side, with the brown river flowing soft around their ankles and the late light beginning to fail. She gave him one more thing before he left. Not a word. A small carved bone token, the size of a finger joint, with a tiny spiral cut into it, to keep in his belt pouch, just in case. He took the token. He did not ask what it was for. He had learned, slowly, over his long life, that some gifts are best received without questions. Then he picked up his club. He picked up his harp. He bowed his head once to her, very slowly, the way a guest bows to a host who has fed him, and he walked back up the slope. She watched him go. She watched the slope swallow him. She watched the last light fail. And then, without changing her expression, she lifted her arms and became a black bird. She rose above the river. She flew slowly along the line of the slope. She kept the Dagda in sight until his fort came into view, until the lamp in his hall was lit, until the door closed behind him. Only then did she turn for home. Maybe you have done that in some quieter way. Watched someone you love get safely home. Stood at a window until the porch light went on. Stayed up until the message said arrived. That kind of love does not announce itself. The Morrigan never told the Dagda she had flown beside him the whole way home. She did not need him to know. She had needed only to do it. She went back into her cave. She sat on a low flat stone inside. She took off her cloak. She laid it across her knees, and she did the long, quiet work that always followed such days. She mourned gently for the people who were still going to die. This is the part of her that the old Irish remembered most kindly. Not the prophecy, not the battle chant, the long, private grief in the dark for everyone she could not save. She did not weep loud. She rarely wept loud. She let 1 or 2 slow tears fall onto the dark red wool in her lap, and then she set her shoulders again and stood up and went on. That is the second face of her work. Not just the warning, not just the witness, the quiet keeping of grief for people who do not yet know they will need it kept. She came back out of the cave. She walked down the soft path. She made her way to her sister's fire. Badby and Nemain and Matcha were waiting. They always were, on nights like this. Bab stood as she came near. She did not speak. She just opened a small folded cloth and tipped a little warm food onto a wooden trencher, and passed it across the fire to her sister. Nemain set a small wooden cup of warm broth in front of the empty seat by the fire. Macha set the dark woolen blanket she had been mending across the back of the seat, and the Morrigan sat down between them. They did not ask how the meeting had gone. They could read it in her shoulders. They sat with her instead, the four of them around the small fire, the dark Irish hills patient all around. This too is a face of her story that the old people loved, not the goddess alone. The goddess with her sisters, the four faces of one quiet truth, sharing a single fire. Eventually they spoke, quietly, slowly. They named the warriors who would fall at Mag Tuired. They named the kings on both sides. They named the small things they would each carry after. Macha promised to take the riders. Nemain promised to take the moment when the Fomorian front line cracked. Bad promised to walk the field after, as Crow, and witness who had fallen, and remember each face. And the Morrigan promised the last thing. She would speak the long chant after the victory, the one that would make the gods listen, the one that would name the second age that was already coming. They sat with that promise a long time. None of them rushed it. The fire burned down to coals. The stars climbed over the dark Irish hills, and still they did not move. Maybe you know that kind of staying, when you and the people you trust most simply sit together with something hard. No solutions, no speeches, just the keeping of company until the night turns over. Eventually Nemain stood. She put one hand briefly on the Morrigan's shoulder. She nodded once, and she walked off into the dark toward the place where she always slept. Macha stood next. She did the same, a hand on the shoulder, a quiet nod. And then she walked off the other direction toward her horses, who would already be waiting at the edge of the pasture. Bad Bee stayed a little longer. Of the three sisters, she was the one who most often knew when a person should not be left alone. She poured the last of the warm broth into the Morrigan's cup before she went. Then she too stood. She squeezed the Morrigan's shoulder once. She walked off into the dark, and the Morrigan was left alone again with the last red coals and the wide field of stars above her. She drank the broth slowly. She watched the coals dim from red to gray, and then she did the small last task of any difficult night. She lay back in the grass with her cloak as a blanket and let her body sleep. Even goddesses sleep, even the ones who hold a whole island in their attention. The old Irish thought that was important, to know that, to remember that. Because if even she rested, even she who carried so much, then maybe you can rest too, tonight, with the broth and the cloak and the very low coals of your day. When the first pale band of dawn appeared along the eastern hills, the Morrigan opened her eyes. She did not move at first. She just lay there and watched the color of the sky change. Then she sat up. She gathered her cloak around her shoulders. She looked east toward the long days ahead, and she walked, calm and steady, toward the morning of the great battle. We follow her there next. The morning of Mag Tuired was gray, not the dramatic gray of a story, the patient gray of every old Irish dawn. Mist along the heather, the kind of cold that settles slowly into the bones. The Tuatha De Danann gathered on one side of the moor, the Fomorians on the other. Two long lines of warriors with breath visible in the cold, no one shouting, yet. Behind the Tuatha line, on a small rise of pale grass, stood the Dagda. He had the great club across his back, he had the small dark harp under his arm, and he had the small bone token somewhere inside his belt pouch. Beside him, on a slightly higher rise, stood a single tall woman in a dark red cloak. The whole Tuatha line could see her. Most of them did not turn to look. They did not need to. They could feel that she was there. That was her first work of the day, just standing there, so the line could feel her, so the warriors below could remember, in their bones, that the land they fought on was still on their side. The Fomorian line moved first. They always did. They came across the heather in a slow, heavy walk that became a slow, heavy run. The Tuatha did not move yet. They were waiting for the word. The Dagda glanced once at the Morrigan. She gave the smallest nod. He lifted the harp. He played 3 soft notes. The notes settled into the Tuatha line like quiet rain. When the Fomorian charge reached the middle of the moor, the Dagda shouted. One word. The exact word the Morrigan had given him at the ford. It was simple. It was short, and it was true. Now I want to be careful here. This is a battle scene, but this is a story for sleep, so I'm going to tell it the way the old Irish told it to children, by feeling, not by blood. So picture this instead. A long pale field, two lines that meet in the middle, a great deal of motion, and above it all, slow and patient, a single black bird turning circles in the cold gray sky. The bird was the Morrigan. She had left her body on the rise behind the line. She was up there, watching, counting, holding every face below her in her quiet attention. At some point in the middle of the long morning, she gave a long, low call. Not loud. Loud was bad B. The Morrigan's call was low. It went into the chest of every warrior on her side and steadied the bone there. From the back of the field came the higher cry of Bad B, sharp and bright and just at the edge of hearing. It made the Fomorian line, for the first time that day, hesitate. Just one heartbeat. That heartbeat was enough. The Tuatha line pushed into that heartbeat, slowly, together, the way a tide rises, not in a single great wave, in one small inevitable inch after another. Macha was already in motion at the far edge. She came around the side of the moor on her bay horse, a small company of riders behind her, calm and steady. She did not gallop, she circled. A circle is a powerful thing on a battlefield. It tells the other line that the world is closing around them, gently, slowly, in a shape they cannot quite see all of. The Fomorian rear felt it before they saw it. Somewhere near the center, Nemain walked along the back rank of the Tuatha line, not in cloak, in white linen. She did not shout. She just touched, very gently, the shoulders of warriors who were beginning to break. Each warrior she touched stopped breaking, not because she had bewitched them, because her hand told them the truth. You are not alone here. You are seen here. Your fear is allowed to pass through you. That is how the Tuatha won the morning, not by being stronger, by being held. By having 4 old women in the field who had decided, together, that no one on their side would fight unseen. That is the part the old Irish remembered most. Not the brave shouts, not the great deeds. The simple fact that during the long worst hour of the morning, no warrior of the Tuatha had been alone. By mid-morning, the Fomorian line had begun to bend. By noon, it had begun to break. By the long, quiet light of the early afternoon, the moor was already mostly silent. The wind was the loudest thing. This is the part of a battle the songs do not usually sing. The long, pale afternoon. When the loud thing is over, and the slow, heavy thing of carrying the dead has only just begun. The Morrigan had landed by then. She had come down from the gray sky. She walked the moor in her own body now, dark red cloak heavy at her shoulders, the small bronze knife in its sheath at her hip. She knelt beside one fallen warrior. She closed his eyes with the side of her thumb. She said his name out loud. Then she stood. She walked to the next. She did the same. She did this for every man on the field. Tuatha or Fomorian, it did not matter. She closed every eye. She said every name. The old Irish believed that if no goddess named you on the day you died, then a part of you stayed cold for a long time after. So the Morrigan kept that part warm. She always did. That was the third face of her work. The warning, the witness, and then the warming of the cold place after. Badba was already working too. She walked the edge of the moor and tied a small dark cloth to a thin branch at the foot of every cairn that was being raised, so no stone pile would go unmarked. Macha rode back and forth along the moor's edge with a small company of riders, slowly, calmly, gathering up wounded men from both sides and carrying them to a low stone shelter where their own healers waited. Nemain sat with the dying, the ones who would not last the afternoon. She did not promise them anything. She just held their wrist and told them, very quietly, what color the sky was above them in case they could not turn their heads. There is a thing about endings. Many people on their last afternoon do not want a speech. They do not want a promise. They want someone to tell them what the sky looks like, and to mean it. When the light began to slant low across the moor, the 4 sisters met again at the center of the field. They did not speak. They stood there, quiet, while the wind moved across the long grass. After a time, the Dagda came down from the rise. He still had the harp under his arm. He still had the club at his back. He still had, somewhere inside the belt pouch, the small bone token. He stood a little apart from the 4 sisters. He did not interrupt. He just waited until the Morrigan looked over at him. Then he bowed his head once, very slowly, and she nodded back. Then she stepped out from her sisters. She walked, calm and steady, to a small low-rise at the very center of the moor. She stood on it. She let the wind move her dark red cloak, and she began to chant. Her chant was slow. It was not a war chant. It was the other kind. The kind the old Irish called a peace prophecy. The kind that named, very simply, the world that the day's loss had just made possible. She named the years to come. She named cattle in green fields again. She named the smell of new bread in a quiet kitchen. She named children who would grow up not knowing this moor's worst day. She named the small things that would be the proof of peace. A grandmother humming. A door left unlocked at noon. A child who would learn the harp because no one had needed her father to learn the spear. All across the moor, every warrior still standing turned slowly toward the small low rise where she stood. They did not understand every word. They did not have to. The shape of the chant did the work. The shape of the chant said this: "We have lost much today. We will keep more than we have lost. And the keeping will look like ordinary kitchens and ordinary mornings. That is the prize. There is a part of you tonight, lying where you are, that already understands this, that the great prize of every long, hard day is sometimes a quiet, kind, ordinary tomorrow, nothing more, nothing less." When the Morrigan finished the peace part of her chant, she did not step down from the rise. She stayed there. She drew one slow breath, and then her voice changed, not in volume, in color. Stay with this. It matters before the end, because the second part of her chant was not for the people standing on the moor that day. It was for everyone who would come long after them. She named a second age, far ahead, past the children, past their children's children, a time when the cold would come back, when the cattle would thin again, when new gods would come with new names and the old fires would burn lower. She named that future too. She did not flinch. The old Irish called this the dark half of the long chant. They did not love that part, but they were grateful she said it out loud. Because here is the old Irish wisdom. If you do not name the dark half, it arrives by surprise. If you do name it, you have at least given it a shape, and a shape, even a sad one, can be carried. When the Morrigan finished the dark half of the chant, the moor was silent. Even the wind seemed to have paused. She stood there one more long, slow breath, and then, very quietly, she stepped down from the rise. Her sisters were already waiting at the foot of the rise. They did not say anything. They simply formed a quiet line on either side of her, and the four of them walked together back across the moor. The Dagda fell in a step behind them. He carried his harp in his hands, openly, not under his arm. He had decided that the harp was the next sound the moor needed, and so he was going to play it softly all the way home. So the long, pale moor of Mag Tuired emptied. Soft notes of the harp moved across the grass. A few crows came down to settle on the cairns, and the first real evening of the new peace began. Stay with me for a small story pause here, because I want to say one thing about a sound. The chant the Morrigan spoke on that rise, the old Irish kept doing it for a long time after. Not in battle, in daily life. Old grandmothers would chant a small piece of it over a sleeping baby. A farmer would mutter a piece of it walking out to check the cattle at dusk. A widow would whisper it over her own washing. The chant told them very quietly that someone had already named the dark half and the bright half of life, and survived both of them and gone on. It was the smallest possible comfort, and it was enough. Maybe you have a phrase like that in your own life. A small line you mutter when no one is listening. A piece of a poem, a line from a song, a name of someone gone, a word that just steadies you. That is the same shape of thing, the same old work, and in a small way, that is the Morrigan's chant still being said. Now back to her, and to the long quiet years after the moor. After Mag Tuired, the Morrigan went home, not to her cave at first, to the small flat stone beside her sister's usual fire. She sat there several days. They sat with her. There was a great deal of nothing said. After a few quiet days she stood up. She thanked them with one slow look. She walked back to her cave at Cu Chulainn, and for a long time after that, she did the slow work of just keeping watch. The years moved on the way years do in old Ireland. Slow, patient, mostly green. The children the Morrigan had named in her chant were born. Then they were small, then they were tall, then they had children of their own. All through those years the Morrigan watched. She did not interrupt much. She went to the standing stone at Tara once a year and laid a small dark cloth in the grass at its foot. That was her quiet sovereignty. She watched the kings come and go. Some kept their quiet oath with the land. Some did not. She did not curse the ones who did not. She just stopped going to their halls. That was usually enough. She watched the cattle too, the great brown bull of the Cooley pastures in particular. The old stories said she watched that one bull more carefully than she watched most kings. We will see why before the night is over. She watched the harpers too, the old storytellers, the grandmothers with phrases. She liked to sit, in crow form, on the roof of any hall where someone was telling a true story to anyone who would listen. That was her favorite work, in those quiet years. Just listening to true stories. She did not need them to be about her. She only needed them to be honest. Honesty fed her in a way nothing else did. Maybe you have noticed this in your own life, that after a long day you do not really want clever talk. You want one honest sentence, one real thing, said plainly, by someone who means it. That is the kind of thing the Morrigan listened for. And there was, in those long, quiet years, a great deal of it being said. Ireland was being kind to itself. The chant was working. But somewhere, slowly, very slowly, the second half of her chant was beginning to come true. The cold was a long way off yet, but the first small frost of it was already in the air on certain nights. The Morrigan felt those nights first. She would step out of her cave on certain evenings and stand very still and just turn her face into the wind. A small thinness in the air would tell her, yes, it is coming. Not yet, but it is coming. She did not tell anyone yet. There was no point. The next thing she had named in her chant was still a generation away. She kept the knowing inside herself, the way she had always kept the hardest things. She also began in those years to turn her attention more often eastward, toward the green plain of Morthemne, toward a small stone fortress at its edge, toward a boy who had not been born yet, but who was, very quietly, already on his way. His name, when he was finally born, would be Setanta. The name he would earn for himself, a few years later, would be Cu Chulainn, the Hound of Chulainn, and he would be the second great love of the Morrigan's quiet life. She did not know yet that he would refuse her. She did not know yet that he would still receive her, at the end, in his own quiet way. She only knew that this boy was already loved by her. She had seen his face from a long way off. That is the part of her people loved best. Not her predictions, not her chance. The simple fact that she could choose from a long way off to already love a child she had never met, and carry that love steadily, year after year, on her own. As the boy grew, she watched. She came to the edges of his fields in crow form. She perched on the low stone walls. She did not interrupt his childhood. She just let him feel, sometimes, that something gentle was paying close attention. The boy noticed her. Not every time, but often enough. He would look up from his game in the field and see a single black bird watching him from a stone wall, and he would tilt his small head and wave. The Morrigan, on the wall, would tilt her small black head back. It was not a wave. It was the bird's version of a wave, and the boy understood it as a wave anyway. That small wave became, over years, a small soft pattern between them. He would not have called it friendship. He was too young to call it anything, but he expected her. And expectation over time is a kind of belonging. As Setanta grew older, the small soft pattern began to fade. He grew tall fast. He grew strong fast. He stopped looking for the crow on the wall. He looked instead at spears, and at older boys, and at what they did with both. The Morrigan let him drift. She did not call him back. She knew that this was how all boys his age moved. They turned outward. They had to. The world needed them to. And love sometimes is to let the turning happen. She also began very quietly to prepare, because she had already seen, in the long second half of her old chant, that this boy was the one who would carry the worst day of the new age on his own young shoulders. She did not want him to. She did not want anyone to, but the chant had been honest. And honest things once said must be carried. She decided that she would help him carry it. That was the love she had to offer. She would offer it to him gently, not as a goddess, as a woman. She would come to him at a river, alone, in human shape. She would not warn him in big words. She would simply offer her hand and let him choose. She knew, before she went, that he might say no. She had seen him grow up. She knew his quick laughter, his quick anger, his quick proud certainty. She prepared herself, calmly, for the possibility that he would not take her hand. She decided to go anyway. That was the choice, not whether he would say yes, whether she would still offer her hand even if he would not. And she decided that yes, she would. Some offers must be made whether or not they are taken. That, in the end, is the deepest part of her work. The willingness to be refused, the willingness to be misunderstood, the willingness to come anyway. It is the part of her that the old Irish remembered most quietly and most carefully. This is also perhaps something you have done in your own way. Walked toward someone with an honest small gift in your hand and known before you arrived that they might not take it, and walked anyway, and been kind anyway. That is the part of you that the old Irish would have recognized. They had a quiet word for that part, the Morrigan word, the Phantom Queen word, the one that walks toward the door even when she knows what is on the other side. She did not go straight to him. She slept first. The night before she would meet Cu Chulainn at the small ford, the Morrigan walked back to the small flat stone at her sister's usual fire. She wanted them with her one more time. They did not ask her what she was about to do. They knew. They had felt her preparing for a long time. They simply made room on the grass for her and set a small wooden cup of warm broth beside the empty place. They talked about easy things, about the cattle in the coulee pastures, about a new song a harper had played that spring, about the small wild rose that had bloomed late this year along the lane near Maka's pasture. They did not talk about Cu Chulainn. They did not talk about tomorrow. They saved their courage. They knew the Morrigan was going to need every quiet, ordinary thing tonight to make tomorrow possible, so they kept the night kind. When the fire burned down to coals, the Morrigan lay back in the grass with her cloak as a blanket, the way she always did. Her sisters did the same around her, and the four of them slept under the patient stars together. This is the first peak of our story. Stay with me one slow breath here, because tomorrow she will walk down to the ford alone, and Cu Chulainn will laugh, and our long second half will begin. But before that, for one heartbeat, let the picture be this. 4 sleeping women under stars, a small dim fire, a quiet promise carried between them, the old Ireland holding the new Ireland gently in its sleep. That is the small bright peak. The 4 of them, safe with each other. On the edge of a long, hard tomorrow, the old Irish put their best blessings into nights like this one. So can you? Settle in now if you have not. Pull your own warm thing a little higher. The first peak is over, the dawn is on the way, and the Morrigan, in her grass and cloak, will be the first of them to open her eyes. When she opens her eyes, the second half of our story begins, but not yet. For now, just rest. The 4 sisters sleep, the stars sit patient, and nothing in the old world is asking you to do anything at all. When the Morrigan finally opened her eyes that morning, the soft pale dawn was already lying along the eastern hills. She did not move at first. She let the warmth of her sisters near her hold her one more minute. Then she sat up slowly. She gathered her cloak around her shoulders. She did not wake them. They had earned the morning. She rose to her bare feet on the cool grass and turned her face east. She walked through the soft, wet grass, past the slow-waking cattle, along the worn dirt path that ran east toward the plain of Morthemne, the same path she had walked 100 times in crow form, watching the boy grow up. Cu Chulainn by now was 17, lean and quick. Copper hair cropped at the jaw, a thin pale scar already on his left cheekbone. He had been a warrior of Ulster for 2 years. He was already the youngest hero of his generation. He was good. Everyone said so. He knew it. He carried it the way a boy carries a new shirt, slightly too proud of it. He had not yet had the kind of day that would teach him how to wear it more quietly. That morning, he had walked alone down to a small, shallow ford at the edge of the plain. He wanted to wash a small cut on his arm. He wanted to be alone with the slow brown water for one quiet hour. It was the same kind of ford the Dagda had met the Morrigan at many generations before. Slow brown water, reeds, a single bent willow. The old Irish thought every small ford in Ireland remembered the first one. When Cu Chulainn reached the bank, he stopped, because a woman was already standing in the shallow water. Tall, dark red cloak, long black hair, bare feet, calm gray-green eyes, watching him without a single word. He did not know her. The boy he had been would have known her. The 17-year-old he was now had stopped looking for crows on stone walls. So he did not know her. He saw only a strange tall woman in a stranger's cloak. She did not introduce herself. The old Irish women rarely did. She simply lifted one open hand, palm up, across the water toward him, a small honest offer, without words, just her hand. He looked at her hand. He looked at her cloak. He looked at her bare feet. He thought she was probably a wandering wise woman trying to attach herself to a young hero. He thought he was too clever for that. He laughed once, short. He said something light, something almost gentle. He said he did not need help. He had cattle to defend and a country to keep. He thanked her, in the careless way of 17, for the offer. The Morrigan did not lower her hand right away. She held it there one more slow breath. She gave him one more chance to look. He did not take it. He shifted his weight to leave. Only then did she lower her hand. She did not curse him. She did not warn him. She did not give him a speech. She just looked at him. One long, calm look. The kind of look you remember years later, after you understand what it meant. Then she turned. She walked out of the water on the far side. She did not look back. She walked up the far bank and through the tall reeds, and was gone before he had washed his small cut. Cu Chulainn did not think much about it. He washed his cut. He drank a little cold water from his cupped hand. He walked back up the slope. He had a long, bright day ahead of him. He went back to his fort. He did the small, bright things of his bright young day. He laughed with the other warriors. He told the story of the strange tall woman at the ford. They laughed too. None of them asked who she might have been. The Morrigan by then was already back at her cave. She had taken a long, slow walk across the plain. She had stood once on the high hill above the plain. She had let the wind dry her face. She had not wept loud. She rarely wept loud. She did not feel rejected. Not exactly. She felt the way a teacher feels when a clever student does not yet know how clever she has been to them. She felt patient. She felt a little tired. She felt willing. She made a small decision there on the hill. She would not stop watching him. She would not stop loving him. She would just have to do it now from a longer distance, and she would have to do it without his understanding. That is a hard kind of love. The kind that has to keep itself warm without being received. Maybe you know someone who has loved you like that at some point in your life. Maybe you have loved someone like that yourself. The old Irish thought that kind of love was the most ordinary kind in the whole world. Mothers carry it. Older friends carry it. Old goddesses carry it. They thought it was the quietest thread holding the world together. So the Morrigan stood up on the hill. She walked back down. She walked back across the plain. She walked back to her cave. She did not sulk. She did not punish. She just went home to her usual work. But here's the new threat. The thing that turns this story now. From the moment Cu Chulainn refused her hand at the ford, a slow, heavy thing was already moving toward him from the other side of Ireland. That slow, heavy thing was Queen Medb of Connacht, a real woman, strong-shouldered, auburn-braided, green-eyed, a queen with a great gold torque at her throat and a sharp idea in her head that would not let her sleep. Medb had decided that very season that she wanted the great brown bull of the coulee pastures, not because she needed it, because her husband had a bull just as fine, and she would not be the lesser. That was the sharp idea. So she gathered her warriors. She gathered her chariots. She gathered her wagons. She decided to ride east across Ireland herself, in person, with an army at her back, and take the great brown bull out of Cooley by force. The cattle raid of Cooley. The Tainbow Quailnge. That is the great long story of the second half of our night, and the only thing standing between Medb's army and the great brown bull was a 17-year-old young warrior at his fort alone. The Ulster King's men were all under an old curse just then. A long story that the old Irish told you only on a full moon. They could not fight. They lay in their beds, sick, for the next 9 days and nights. So Cu Chulainn was on his own. He did not know it yet, but the Morrigan was about to come back to him, 3 more times, in 3 more shapes, and try to help him anyway. We follow her there next. For 9 days and nights, Cu Chulainn held the only road into Ulster. He stood at a small ford on the edge of the plain, the same kind of ford, slow brown water, reeds, a single willow. Medb's army came one warrior at a time. That was the old rule of fords. One man crosses, one man defends. The army had to wait its turn, and Cu Chulainn, calm as the slow brown water, took the warriors one at a time. We are not going to live inside those 9 days. Not closely. This is a story for sleep, so I am going to tell you only the slow heart of them. The light, the mist on the water, the way Cu Chulainn breathed. He breathed slowly. He drank cold water from his cupped hand between warriors. He sat on a flat stone at the edge of the ford and looked at the slow movement of the reeds. He let himself rest in small pieces between the long pieces of work. The Morrigan watched from the high hill above the plain. She did not come down at first. She wanted to give him time. She wanted to see how long he could hold his breathing alone. He held it longer than she expected. On the third day, when she could see he was getting tired, she decided to come down. She walked, slowly, the way she had walked to him the first time. She left her dark red cloak behind on the hill. She took a different shape instead. She came to him as a young red-haired woman in a pale green dress, walking up the bank of the ford with a small basket of warm bread and a small pale clay jug of cool, clean milk. Cu Chulainn looked up from his stone. He saw a young woman. He did not see the Morrigan. He had not learned yet to look for her under any other shape. He thanked the young woman polite and asked her to leave the basket and go. She did not leave right away. She offered again to stay, to pour the milk for him, to sit with him while he ate. She offered again the most ordinary kind of kindness. He thanked her again and asked her again to go. She accepted his thanks. She did not push. She set the small jug carefully on the stone. She turned, and as she turned away from him, her right hand brushed once, softly, against his right hand, just for one heartbeat, and then she was gone. He felt it. He did not understand it. He went back to watching the ford. The young woman walked back along the green bank and up over the rise and out of sight, and the Morrigan on the high hill opened her eyes again in her own body. Her right hand was warm. That was the first of 3 quiet attempts. The Morrigan had decided that since he would not take her offer as a goddess, she would slip it to him as a stranger, in small ordinary ways, so that the gift would land even if the giver was not seen. Maybe you have done that for someone too. Loved them in a way they could not see. Slipped them small ordinary kindnesses. A meal, a clean shirt, a small note, something that made their hard day easier and did not ask to be noticed. That is the Morrigan kind of love. The unseen kind. The kind that does the work and leaves the room before the thank you. The kind the old Irish honored most quietly. The kind you may not have a single word for in your own life. On the 5th day, the Morrigan came down again. Differently this time. Not as a young woman with bread, as a great smooth eel in the slow brown water at his feet. She wanted to slow Medb's warriors down at the moment they crossed. When the next warrior of Medb's army stepped into the ford, the eel wrapped softly around his ankles. The warrior stumbled. Cu Chulainn took the moment. The warrior fell. Cu Chulainn was steady on the stones. The eel slid free. Cu Chulainn, in the heat of the moment, did not understand that he had been helped. He thought he had simply caught a lucky moment. He felt strong. He felt clever. He stepped after the eel as it slid past him and brought his foot down on its body. Hard. He did not kill her. The Morrigan was not killable by a foot in a river, but he hurt her. He pressed her body badly, and as the eel slid away downstream, the pale silver gleam along her back was streaked with new dark. On the high hill, the Morrigan opened her eyes in her own body again. She winced once. Her ribs hurt. She set her jaw quietly and breathed slowly through the wince until the worst of it passed. She did not regret coming. That is something the old Irish remembered most carefully about her, that she came anyway, even when she knew the boy she was helping would also be the one who would hurt her. She did not stop helping. Maybe you know that too. Someone in your life who has helped you quietly, even when the helping cost them. Even when you did not see the help, or did not understand it, or by mistake even hurt the one who was giving it. The Morrigan is, in a way, a name for those people in your life. The ones who keep coming. The ones who help and shapes you do not always recognize. The ones who absorb a little harm and stay near you anyway. On the 7th day, she came down again, differently. As a great gray wolf at the far edge of the ford. She wanted to scatter the cattle Medb's herders had brought along to feed her army. She wanted to make their march heavier. The wolf moved gently among the cattle in the long grass and frightened them in a slow, steady way into a wide spread. The herders shouted. The cattle scattered. The march had to slow. Cu Chulainn used the slowing. When the slowing reached Cu Chulainn at the ford, he understood it as luck again. He felt strong again. He felt clever again. And when the great gray wolf trotted past him at the edge of the ford to make her way back to the hill, he threw a small slingstone at her. He did not aim to kill her. He only meant to scare her off. But the small slingstone struck her in the side and made her stumble. She caught herself. She did not turn her head toward him. She kept trotting. She crossed the bank and was gone. On the high hill, the Morrigan opened her eyes in her own body again. Her side hurt now. She let out one slow breath. She set both palms against the cool grass and bent her head and waited until the new winds passed. She did not regret it. On the 9th day, she came one last time, differently again, as a quiet white-red heifer that stepped onto the ford at the same moment Medb's next warrior was preparing to cross. The warrior hesitated. Cu Chulainn caught him in the hesitation. Cu Chulainn again took the moment. The hesitating warrior fell. Cu Chulainn was steady. The pale heifer turned to cross back to her side of the bank. As she turned, Cu Chulainn caught her right foreleg with the butt of his spear. Not in anger, in reflex. The heifer stumbled. She caught herself. She did not look at him. She kept walking, slowly, to the far bank. She climbed up. She walked away through the reeds. And then on the hill, the Morrigan opened her eyes in her own body once more. Her right shin hurt. 3 small woundings, one in her ribs, one in her side, one in her right shin. 3 times she had come to help. 3 times he had hurt her in the moment of the helping. 3 times she had healed herself alone on the hill. After the 3rd healing, she sat down on the soft green grass for a long time. She did not stand up right away. She gave herself the slow, quiet hours the work of healing needs. She watched the long, pale grass move in soft, slow wind around her. Eventually she did stand. She gathered her dark red cloak. She turned calmly and walked back along the high green ridge toward home. She had work still to do, but for one slow afternoon, she let herself walk slow. That evening she walked back along the worn dirt path toward her cave at Cu Chulainn. The land was softer here. The slow brown river ran beside the path. The reeds bent gently. She let the slow walk be itself. When she reached her cave, she did not go inside right away. She sat down on the flat stone outside the dark mouth. She watched the small, simple clay oil lamp her sisters had quietly left lit for her, and she breathed slowly into the work of being alone again. Stay with me a slow breath here, because this part of her work is, I think, the part you may need to feel for yourself tonight. Not the goddess part, the sit on the stone part, the healing part, the being quietly tired part. Maybe you have a stone in your own life. A small place where you sit, alone, after the long pieces of helping someone. A doorway, a worn chair, a side of the bed, the soft, small place where your own healing happens. The Morrigan would understand that small place in your life completely. She has one too, and she would not ask you tonight to do anything more. She would simply sit, quietly, beside your stone or chair, with her own warm, small lamp. That image, more than any of her great chants and prophecies, is the one the old Irish loved best, the goddess on the stone with the small lamp. The one who has been hurt today and is healing slowly, the one who is still willing. Stay with me for a small story pause here, because there is one shape the Morrigan takes that the old Irish kept telling each other about, very quietly, into the late centuries. I want to name it tonight, softly. It is the shape of the washer at the ford. A quiet old woman kneeling at a small, shallow ford, washing a long length of pale linen, wringing red water out of it slowly. She does not look up. She does not call you over. The old Irish said that if you came over the rise of a quiet hill at dusk and saw a woman like that at a small, shallow ford below you, washing one long pale linen with red water dripping from it, you should stop. You should not look away. You should also not pretend to be unafraid. Because the washer's quiet work is to wash in advance the linen of the people who will not be alive much longer. She does it carefully. She does it kindly. She gives them, in advance, the dignity of being prepared for. That is the washer at the ford, the third small face of the Morrigan's work. The warning, the witness, the washing clean of the cloth that no one else can stand to wash. We will see her wash this kind of cloth one more time tonight. Now back to our story. After the 9 days, Cu Chulainn went home for a single quiet night. Medb's army paused. The Ulstermen were still sick in their beds. The young warrior had bought them all another day. He was tired in a way he had never been before. He went into his small, low room. He laid the gay bolg against the wall. He sat down on the edge of the low wooden bed. He stayed there a long time, just looking at his own hands. After a while, there was a soft knock at his door. Not the knock of a warrior, the quiet knock of someone older. He looked up. He said, "Come in." The door opened, and an old woman stepped softly inside. She was small. She walked with a slight bend at one shoulder. She carried a small clay bowl of warm milk in one hand and a small folded clean linen cloth in the other. She did not introduce herself. She just walked over and knelt down beside him. This was the Morrigan. He still did not know her. She had not asked him to know her. She was here to do 3 small ordinary things, and then to go. She did not need him to recognize her tonight. She lifted the small folded clean linen cloth. She dipped one corner of it in the small clay bowl of warm milk. She reached up gently and washed the dust from his right cheek. He did not move. He let her. He had not been touched like that in a long time. This is the darkest hour of his story, the hour the old Irish called the still hour, the hour when even the bravest young warrior simply needs an old woman to wash the dust from his cheek and not say anything about it. When she had finished washing his cheek, she dipped a fresh corner of the cloth in the small clay bowl of warm milk. She gently washed the dust from his left cheek, then his forehead, then the back of his right hand, then the back of his left hand. That is all she did. She did not heal his small visible wounds. She did not bind his small cuts. She washed the dust from his face and his hands. She let him feel, again, that he was a person before he had been a hero. When she had finished, she set the small folded cloth carefully beside the bowl. She rose slowly, with a slight bend at her shoulder. She turned, and she walked back to the door of his small, low room. At the door she paused. She turned her head a little, only a little, not all the way. She did not look at him directly. She just said, very softly, that he was a good young man, and then she opened the door and went out into the dark. Cu Chulainn sat there a long time after the door closed. He did not understand what had happened. He only understood that he had been touched kindly. He lay back on the low wooden bed. He let himself sleep. Outside, the Morrigan walked back along the worn dirt path between low stone walls toward her high green hill. The moon was up by then. The cold, pale silver light lay calm along the soft grass. She walked slow. She did not regret the kindness. She did not regret the small lie of her old woman shape. She had wanted to wash his cheek and could not do it as a stranger at a ford. So she had done it as a stranger at a door instead. That is, in the end, the Morrigan's deepest skill. To find a small, honest way to get a small, honest gift into a person who cannot accept it from the giver they would refuse. The shape changes. The gift does not. This is the part of her that the old Irish would have most wanted you to know about tonight. Because somewhere in your own life there is someone you would like to help, who cannot for now receive your help with your name on it. There may be a way to help them anyway, not as you, as someone smaller. A meal left in a basket, a clean shirt slipped onto a chair, a small simple thing done at the door of their room when they are not looking. The Morrigan would understand exactly. But that is for your tomorrow. For tonight, let her keep doing the work for you. Let her wash, in her quiet way, the small dust from your day. You do not have to do anything but let her near. Back on the hill, the Morrigan sat down again at her usual flat stone outside her cave. She did not light a new lamp tonight. The cold, pale silver moonlight was already enough. She sat there until the moon moved past her shoulder. She sat there until the sky began to lighten. She sat there until the first pale band of warm dawn appeared again along the eastern hills. Then she stood. The day she had been preparing for had arrived. That day, Cu Chulainn went back to his ford. He stood on the same flat stones in the same shallow brown water. He had washed his face. He had eaten the last of the warm milk from the old woman's small clay bowl. He was steady. Medb's army began to cross again. He took them again, one at a time. The sun came up. The sun moved across. The sun began to sink. He took them. The plain behind him filled, slowly, with low piles of gray stones. The Morrigan watched again from her high green hill. She did not come down this time. She had given him what she could give him. The rest was his work. She let it be his work. Eventually, Medb's army began to falter. Eventually, their best champions were lost at the ford. Eventually, the rest of them lost heart. They turned, they went home, slowly in a long, quiet line back across Ireland. Medb took the great brown bull with her anyway. In the end, the story of the bull itself is its own long, quiet story. We are not telling that one tonight, but know this: he did not survive the trip. Bulls, like kings, do not always. But Cu Chulainn, by the end of that long, quiet day, was alone again at his ford. The army had turned, the sun was setting, the plain behind him was very quiet. He was very tired. He sat down again on the flat stone at the bank. He sat there a long time. He thought about the old woman with the warm milk. He thought about the young red-haired woman with the bread. He thought for the first time about the eel and the wolf and the white-red heifer. And he remembered very slowly the tall woman in the dark red cloak who had offered him her open hand at this same ford 9 days ago. He understood at last who she had been. He understood at last how often she had come. He did not jump up. He did not go looking for her. He understood now that she had not come for that. He just sat at the bank and let the understanding sit in him. He gave her, finally, the gift she had been giving him. The honest small attention. On the hill, the Morrigan felt the attention land. She did not know how to describe what it felt like. She just knew that something warm had arrived in her that had been cold for 9 days. She let her shoulders soften a little. That was the small private peace between the two of them. No speeches, no reconciliations. He had understood. She had felt the understanding. The work between them did not need any more shape than that. It was already complete. But here's the part of the old story that the old Irish always said softly. Because even though the bull was gone, even though Medb was retreating, even though Ulster was waking again from its long curse, the second half of the chant was still moving. Cu Chulainn had held a road for 9 days alone. He had taken 100 warriors. He had been awake more than he had been asleep. He had been wounded more than he had healed. He had become, in 9 days, the first hero of his generation. And he was tired in a way no boy his age should be. Other troubles were waiting for him after the Táin. Other days, other long fords, other quiet enemies. The old Irish do not tell those stories happily. They are the second half of his life. They are also the second half of the chant. I'm not going to tell you all of those stories tonight. This is a story for sleep, and we are nearly there. I will tell you instead only the very end. The last small soft hour of his long young life. The one the Morrigan came for in person. Stay with me one small story pause here. Because I want to say one more thing about her healing, about the 3 small woundings and the 3 small healings, about why the old Irish told them in that exact order. The wounding was small, the healing was equally small. That is the careful symmetry of her work. She did not overheal. She did not perform a great miracle. She matched her healing exactly to her hurt. The old Irish thought that was the highest kind of care. Because overhealing is a kind of pride. It says, I am bigger than your hurt. The Morrigan was not bigger than his hurt. She had been part of it, and she healed only what she had hurt. Not a bit more. That was her honesty. Maybe you have known that kind of honesty too. Someone in your life who matches their care exactly to what they have done. Who does not overpromise. Who does not underdeliver. Who simply does the right small careful thing. The old Irish would have said that person carries the Morrigan in them, in small, quiet, honest, matched care. Not over, not under. Just exactly what is needed. Tonight, with the dim coals of your day, let yourself receive it from her. Now back to her one last time. Years went by between the Táin and the last day. Cu Chulainn grew a little older. He grew a little quieter. He learned slowly to look more often for old women carrying small bowls of warm milk. He learned slowly to wave back at crows. But the second half of the chant kept moving. New troubles came, new cattle raids, new old enemies, new small wounds that healed a little slower than the wounds before them, and then on a slow gray morning, the final small trouble came. Cu Chulainn took a deep wound that morning, not at the ford, on the open plain. He carried it back towards Standing Stone of Tara. He knew calmly, the way grown warriors come to know, that this one would not heal. He walked slowly. He did not hurry. He had decided calmly what he wanted his last small hour to look like. He wanted to be standing up. He wanted to be at the standing stone. He wanted his hands free. So he took a long, thick rope from his belt. He tied himself slowly to standing stone of Terra. The rope went around his chest. He tied it well. He left the spear leaning against the stone beside him. He stood up calmly. He turned his face east. He waited. He did not call for anyone. He did not pray. He did not regret. He just stood there at the standing stone with his face calm and east, and the slow gray morning unfolded gently around him. At the small shallow ford a short distance away, an old woman knelt at the bank in the soft pale gray morning. She had brought a long length of pale linen with her. She was washing it carefully in the slow brown water. Red water dripped slowly from the cloth. She did not look up. She did not call out to him. She just washed the linen carefully and softly until it was clean. Then she laid it gently across a flat sun-warmed stone beside her. Then she sat back on her heels and waited with him. The young warrior at the standing stone could not see her from where he stood, but he could feel her. He had learned, slowly, in the years since the Tain, to feel her. The whole quiet morning had her shape. Above him, very high in the soft, pale gray sky, a single black crow began to turn slow, patient circles. She was a long way up. She was not in a hurry. The slow gray morning kept unfolding gently around them both. Eventually, when the slow morning had given him every last quiet breath it was going to give, the young warrior's eyes softened. His head bowed a little against the rough rope, and the wide, quiet plain became very gently, even quieter than before. That is when she came down from her slow circles. She did not rush. She did not call. She simply descended in long, slow, patient circles until her wings were almost touching the long, pale grass around the standing stone. She landed very lightly on his right shoulder. She did not weigh much. She set her small black feet carefully on the worn green-brown cloth of his cloak. She did not look at his face. She just settled there, calm and patient. This is the moment the old Irish always paused on. The whole long story of the Morrigan and Cu Chulainn folded into this single small image. The young warrior at the standing stone, the blackbird patient on his shoulder, the wide, quiet plain, the pale gray sky. She did not stay forever. After a time, she lifted her wings once. She stepped off softly. She rose into the soft, pale gray sky, and she left very high in the same slow, patient circles she had come down in. She was not in a hurry. And that, in the end, is the long old story of the Morrigan and the young warrior who refused her. She had warned him. She had walked away from him. She had healed him, and she had still come to him at the end. Now stay with me, what it all means. So what does this old story mean? The old Irish answered that question slowly, in 3 small quiet pieces, by firelight, over many generations. Tonight we will hold the 3 pieces gently together. The first piece is the warning. The Morrigan is the part of the world that already knows, the friend who already heard, the grandmother who already saw, the quiet older self inside you that already understands. Her warning is not loud. It is rarely a speech. It is more often a hand held open across a small ford, a pot of warm milk, an old woman at the door, a pale linen washed clean in advance. That is the first piece. Honesty as a small offered thing. Not a lecture, not a punishment, just an open hand, and the willingness to be refused, and the willingness to come back anyway in a different shape. The second piece is the witness. The Morrigan is the part of the world that stays. When the loud thing is over, she is still there. She closes the eyes. She speaks the names. She warms the cold places after. Her witness is not a performance. It is rarely a speech. It is more often a small, simple presence. She does not require you to understand it. She does not require you to be grateful. She just stays. That is the second piece. Presence after the storm. The kind of love that does not ask for an audience. The kind of care that does the small work of remembering. The kind of friend that simply does not leave. The third piece is the washer. The one who washes in advance. The pale linen of the hardest day. Not to scare you, to prepare it for you. So that when the hard day arrives, the linen is already clean. The washer is the most private of the 3 faces. Most of her work happens at small fords nobody else knows about. She does it without applause. She does it because the work needs to be done. She does it because she loves the people who will need clean linen. That is the third piece. The unseen preparation. The kind of love that lays clean linen for the hardest day before the hardest day arrives. The kind of care that is the deepest because it is the least seen. 3 pieces. Warning. Witness. Washing. The old Irish thought any one of them, done with steady honesty, was enough to make a life worth carrying. All 3 of them, in one woman, made a goddess. But the old Irish did not want you to leave the firelight thinking the Morrigan was only a goddess. They wanted you to leave the firelight knowing where to find her shape in your own ordinary life. Where do you find her shape? You find her shape in the friend who tells you the hard thing, calmly only once, and does not lecture. You find her shape in the older relative who shows up with soup and does not stay for thanks. You find her shape in the teacher who already knows you can do it before you do. In the partner who tied a small rope of love around your chest before the hard wind came. In the old grandmother who hummed the small chant over your sleeping head when you were 3. You also find her shape in yourself, in the part of you that already knows, in the part of you that has already prepared, quietly for the hardest day, in the part of you that loves people without asking them to notice. That part of you. The Morrigan part, the Phantom Queen part, she is alive in you tonight. She has carried you through the small, hard moments of this day. She is sitting quietly at the edge of your bed right now, with her small lamp. She is not asking you to do anything. She is not testing you. She is simply staying, the way she has always stayed. Warning when it was useful, witnessing when warning was over, washing when the day's small dust needed to be lifted away. The dust of today is the small kind, the small worries, the small undone tasks, the small unspoken words, the small worry about tomorrow. She is quietly washing them away with her warm, small linen. You do not have to help her. You do not have to thank her. You only have to let her near. To let your shoulders soften. To let your jaw unclench. To let the small, dim coals of your day glow gently out. That is the meaning of the long old story, not a lesson, a staying, a simple permission. The Morrigan, in all 3 of her quiet faces, is staying gently near you tonight. The Morrigan did not stay only in the old age. Her shape kept walking. Through the long quiet centuries, into the folk tales of every Irish village, into the small chants of grandmothers. Long after the old Irish gods had quieted, country people in Ireland still told each other, very softly, about a washer at a small ford. They did not always use her name. They did not need to. The shape of the story was enough. They told it carefully. They told it kindly. They told it as a quiet old warning that was also a quiet old kindness. They said, if you ever see her, bow your head once, slowly, and walk on. That was the whole rule. The crow, in those same long centuries, kept appearing on stone walls, on rooftops, on cairns, on hill paths at dusk. People said hello to her by tilting their heads. She tilted her small head back. The small, soft pattern continued. The Tain Bo Quailinge itself, the great long story of Cu Chulainn and Medb, was carefully written down by gentle monks in stone-walled monasteries in the early Christian age. They knew the Morrigan was older than their book. They wrote her in carefully. They drew small crows in the margins of the page. They did not preach against her. They wrote her down with care, the way you write down a respected elder. Her stories survived because of that small, careful drawing of crows. In our own time, the Morrigan has been quietly returning to many people's awareness, not as a goddess on a high hill, as a small, honest pattern, the friend who already knows, the older woman who comes when needed, the washer at the small ford. People who feel her shape today often do not call her by her old name. They call her the small voice, the honest friend, the quiet older self, the kind one. That is fine. The name does not matter. The shape does. The shape is the same as it was at the small Unshin Ford a long time ago. An open hand, a warm small bowl, a pale linen washed clean in advance, a quiet patient presence that does not require to be thanked. So when you next meet that shape in your own life, in a friend, in an older relative, in a stranger, in yourself, you will know its old name. It is the Morrigan, the Phantom Queen. Still walking, still warming, still here. Let the slow brown river run on without us. Let the standing stone keep its long, quiet watch. Let the small clay lamp dim soft amber, to faint amber to none at all. Let your breath slow with the slow brown water. Let your shoulders settle. The old hill is patient. The old goddess is patient. The night is patient. There is nothing left to carry tonight. Somewhere ahead, another night. Different stars, a different fire, the same kind of quiet. Next time, somewhere older. A different fire, a different kind of dark. For tonight, let it be only this. A slow brown river, a standing stone, a patient sky, a small warm lamp going gentle out. The old goddess is sitting near. You do not need to greet her. You do not need to thank her. You only need to let her stay. The dust of today is being washed away, the small undone tasks, the small unspoken words, the small worries, all of them, soft, lifted off. The slow brown river will keep flowing. The patient sky will keep its stars. The old hill will keep its quiet. None of them ask anything of you now. Go gently now. The old story is finished. The old goddess is staying. We'll be here when you're ready.
Sleep gently. The patient stars are here. The slow brown river is here. The old goddess is here. Good night.